The thermal scope painted the world in shades of green and white. Three vehicles, no headlights, crawling up the fire road like insects seeking carrion. Colonel James Maddox held his breath and counted 12 heat signatures in the lead truck. 8 in the second, 6 in the trail vehicle. 26 hostiles. The math was simple. His team numbered 8, including himself. Long odds, but he'd faced worse in Fallujah in the Hindu Kush, in places that never made it onto maps or into after-action reports. The wind carried scents his wolf could parse even in human form. Diesel exhaust, gun oil, fierce sweat from the cargo, 6 Omegas based on the pheromone signatures bleeding through the truck's ventilation. One of those scents made his hackles rise for reasons he couldn't immediately identify. Something familiar, something that tasted like MIT libraries and chemistry labs, and a promise made 30 years ago to a woman who died because he'd been too slow, too late, too fucking human when she'd needed the wolf. Major Eric Thorne's voice crackled through the earpiece. Position 2 secure, charges set on the bridge. Your call, Ghost. James' call sign, Ghost, for the way he moved through enemy territory, like smoke through chain link, clicked twice. Acknowledgement without words. The convoy would cross Settler's Bridge in 90 seconds. The bridge would drop them into the ravine. His team would move in during the chaos extract. The Omegas eliminate the traffickers. Clean, surgical. The way he'd run operations for 3 decades before the wolf in his blood had forced him out of the army and into this new kind of war. The lead truck's bumper kissed the bridge's wooden planks. James's finger hovered over the detonator. 30 years of trigger discipline kept him steady. Wait for the middle vehicle. Maximum impact. Minimum collateral risk to the cargo. The second truck rolled onto the bridge. James pressed the button. The explosion turned night into noon for half a heartbeat. The bridge's center supports disintegrated in a bloom of orange and black. Wood and steel and screaming metal plunged into the ravine. The lead truck's driver stood on the brakes too late. Momentum carried the vehicle over the edge. The trail truck fishtailed its driver, better trained or luckier. It stopped 5 feet from the drop. Go, go, go. James didn't recognize his own voice. The wolf wanted out, wanted blood, wanted to make these human traffickers understand that some prey fought back with teeth designed by evolution to crush bone. He came down the slope at a dead run, his HK-417 up and tracking. The first hostile climbed out of the trail truck's passenger side, an AK variant in his hands. James put 2 rounds through his chest before the man's boots touched dirt. The second hostile, the driver raised his hands. Surrendering. James shot him in the face anyway. Men who transported kidnapping women in cargo containers didn't get to surrender. That was the protocol, his protocol, the one he'd written in blood and grief 5 years ago when he'd pulled Emily's body from a similar truck and learned what traffickers did to Omegas who resisted. Eric and his fire team materialized from the tree-line ghosts themselves, moving with the fluid economy of men who'd survived multiple deployments. They hit the trail truck hard, yanking open the rear doors. 6 Omegas huddled inside, zip-tied and blindfolded. One of them was crying. Another sat perfectly still, her shoulders set in a line that spoke of military bearing, despite the restraints. That scent again. Libraries and chemistry and broken promises. James moved to the ravine's edge. Below, the 2 crashed trucks burned. No survivors. He felt nothing. 30 years ago, he might have felt something. Regret, maybe. Horror at his capacity for violence. Now there was only the mission objective. 6 rescued, 26 eliminated, 0 friendly casualties. Success by any metric that mattered. Clear Eric's voice. We've got 6 packages all breathing. One's asking for you by name, boss. Says she knows you. Impossible. James hadn't run in civilian circles since before Emily. His world was packed territory and military contracts, and the endless fucking war against men who treated Omegas like livestock. He walked back to the truck, his rifle still up, still scanning for threats that logic said weren't coming, but 30 years of combat had taught him were always coming. The Omega with the military bearing had worked her blindfold down to her neck. Even in the firelight, her eyes were sharp, angry. She was maybe mid-40s, gray threading through dark hair, a scar bisecting her left eyebrow. She looked at James and her lips peeled back from her teeth. You absolute fucking idiot. 8 months. I was 2 days from identifying the entire network, and you blow up my ride and kill my cover in one brilliant tactical clusterfuck. James lowered his rifle an inch. What's Special Agent Sarah Novak? FBI. Undercover. Or I was until you decided to play hero. Eric moved between them, his blade out cutting her zip ties. We had no intelligence suggesting FBI involvement. Our source said this was a straight trafficking run to auction in Vegas. Your source was wrong. Sarah Novak stood rubbing her wrists. The other Omegas stared at her like she'd grown a second head. I've been inside the Blackthorn Syndicate for 8 months. I had Volkov's trust. I was 2 days from a meet with their banker. Now that's burned because Captain America here wanted to blow something up. James felt his wolf surge against his ribs. She smelled like mate. Impossible. Emily had been his mate. The bond had died with her. You don't smell like FBI. You smell like Silver Moon bloodline. I know. That's why the Bureau recruited me for this op. Blackthorn's been targeting Silver Moon Omegas specifically. Geneticists, not just traffickers. They're building a database. James looked at Eric. His second-in-command's expression mirrored his own confusion. Pull the packages out. Medical check. I need 5 with the agent, ma'am. Eric's tone was respectful but firm. We need to verify your story before my badge is in my bra. Left side. You want to reach in there or should I? Eric stepped back. James moved forward instead, close enough that her scent MIT libraries and chemistry and something wild underneath, something that sang to the wolf made his vision tunnel. Slowly, his voice came out rougher than intended. If you're lying, if you're Blackthorn, then I'm a really shitty operative getting myself trafficked with 5 genuine victims. Sarah's voice dripped sarcasm, but her hands moved slowly, carefully extracting a leather badge wallet from inside her torn shirt. She flipped it open. FBI Special Agent Sarah Novak, Omega Biology Specialist, Undercover Operations Division. The badge looked legitimate. The photo matched, though the woman in the picture had fewer scars and less gray. James took the wallet, examined it under his rifle light. The holographic seal responded correctly to the angle change. Either she was FBI or Blackthorn had access to Bureau-grade forgery equipment. You're coming with us. Protective custody until we verify. Like hell, I need to contact my handler, reconstruct. Your handler thinks you're in Vegas by now in a cage. If you make contact, Blackthorn will know the convoy was hit. They'll scatter. We'll verify your story, and then you can burn your operation however you want. Sarah's jaw worked. You're Alpha, packed territory, northern Montana. King, actually. James watched her process that. And you just blew up what was probably a significant intel pipeline because you didn't coordinate with federal law enforcement. We coordinate when we're informed of operations are running. James's patience, never his strongest asset, was fraying. You have 10 seconds to decide. Come with us, voluntary, or we carry you. Either way, you're not staying at this scene. Sarah looked at the burning wreckage in the ravine, at the 5 other Omegas who were being checked by Eric's medic, at James, her eyes narrowing as she parsed something in his scent or his stance, or the way his wolf was clawing to get closer to her. Fine. Protective custody. 24 hours. Then I contact the Bureau and you explain why you fucked up 8 months of work. James clicked his radio. Package secured. All units exfil protocol. Eric, you've got the civvies. I'm transporting the Fed personally. Boss Eric's tone carried a warning. The mate sent. You sure? I'm sure she needs supervision. James met his oldest friend's eyes. And I'm sure I need answers about why FBI's running ops in pack territory without notification. The ride back to the compound took 90 minutes of dirt roads and fire trails. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of James's F-250, her wrists now secured with flex cuffs in front of her, a compromise after she'd punched him in the jaw when he'd tried to restrain her hands behind her back. The punch had been professional. Good rotation, proper weight transfer. His wolf had liked it more than was appropriate. You're 60 if you're a day. Sarah's voice cut through the engine noise. What's a senior citizen doing running tactical extractions? 58. And I do it because somebody has to. There are federal agencies for this. Federal agencies that let operations like yours run for 8 months while 6 women get trafficked. James kept his eyes on the road. His wolf wanted to look at her, wanted to map every scar and angle. He denied it. I've pulled 200 Omegas out of trafficking rings in 5 years. FBI's closed maybe 20 cases in the same period. You do the math on which approach saves more lives. You're a vigilante. I'm a king protecting his people. Self-appointed king. Sarah shifted in her seat. The movement sent another wave of her scent through the cab. What happened to checks and balances, rule of law? The law says I'm sovereign over pact territory. Supreme Court affirmed it 3 years ago. Inside my borders, I am the law. James felt the old argument rising. How many times had he had this fight with federal prosecutors, with senators who thought pact sovereignty was a quaint anachronism? We police our own. We protect our own. And when humans decide to traffic our omegas, we handle that too. By executing traffickers without trial. By stopping them permanently. You want to argue Fourth Amendment rights for slavers. Agent Novak, we can do that later. Right now, you're in protective custody in territory that's probably compromised if Blackthorn had the resources to infiltrate your operation. They didn't infiltrate. I volunteered. Sarah's voice carried an edge that made James risk a glance. She was staring out the window at the dark pines flashing past. My husband died in the Boston Marathon bombing. I spent 3 years hunting the network that funded it. Turns out human traffickers and terrorists use the same money laundering infrastructure. Blackthorn's syndicate's been moving money for both. I got close enough that they recruited me, thought a Silver Moon Omega would bring premium prices and give them breeding access. I played along, got inside, and you blew it up. James processed that. The timbre of grief in her voice was one he recognized. I lost my mate 5 years ago. Traffickers. By the time we found her, she'd been in their hands for 72 hours. He didn't elaborate, didn't describe what those 72 hours had done to Emily, what they'd left behind. You have my condolences about your husband, but your operation was compromised whether I hit that convoy or not. They knew. Bullshit. We had intelligence 2 hours ago that tonight's convoy was moving you to auction. Not to Volkov's inner circle, not to some banker. To Vegas. To a cage. If my source is correct and he's never been wrong, Blackthorn made you as federal 8 months ago and has been feeding you controlled information while planning your disposal. Sarah went very still. What source won't I protect? But he's inside Blackthorn's infrastructure. Has been for a year. And he says you were burned before you started. The truck hit a pothole, James corrected smoothly, muscle memory from decades of tactical driving. Sarah's breathing had changed, shorter, faster. The kind of breathing that preceded violence or tears. If that's true, her voice cracked. 8 months. I've been filing reports on shell corporations and money transfers, thinking I'm building a case, and I've been building exactly what they wanted you to build. James kept his tone neutral. False intel to keep the Bureau looking in wrong directions while they expanded operations. It's effective. I'd do the same if I were running counterintelligence. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not Blackthorn, spinning an elaborate story? You don't. James took a turn onto a paved road, civilization creeping back in. But you'll meet my source. You'll see his intelligence. And then you'll decide if you want to keep pretending your operation wasn't dead before it started, or if you want to help us burn Blackthorn to the ground for real. They drove in silence for 20 minutes. The compound appeared gradually, first the outer checkpoints, then the inner perimeter fence. Finally, the main lodge that had once been a wilderness resort before James had converted it into headquarters. Wolves in human form patrolled the grounds, rifles visible. Deterrence mostly. Anyone trying to assault the compound would face more than bullets. James parked in the command center lot. This isn't a prison, but for the next 24 hours, you're a guest. Yeah, my guest, which means you follow protocols and don't start fires I'll have to put out. Where are the other Omega's medical wing? They'll be processed, real names, real families, real trauma counseling. Then we find them safe places. Pack families who will take them in, protect them, help them rebuild. The ones who want it get self-defense training. The ones who don't get peace. Sarah looked at the compound, at the guards, at James. You really see yourself as the good guy here. I see myself as the only guy showing up. James opened his door. Now come on, you need medical clearance, a debrief, and probably food. When's the last time you ate this morning? Protein bar. Typical Fed. James heard Eric's truck pulling in behind them. You're going to shower, eat real food, and then we'll talk about what happens next. Sarah climbed out of the truck, her cuffed hands making the movement awkward. I'm going to contact my handler after the debrief, After we verify your story and you verify mine. James came around the truck close enough that his wolf surged again. That mate scent. Impossible. You make contact now, you risk alerting Blackthorn that we know about their operation. Give me 24 hours. Then I'll personally drive you to the field office in Missoula. And if I refuse, then I'll lock you in a guest room with 3 meals a day and satellite TV until you see reason. James watched her eyes narrow. I'm not the enemy, Agent Novak, but I'm also not fucking around when it comes to Blackthorn. They've killed too many of my people, taken too many Omegas. If you're genuinely trying to stop them, we're on the same side. If you're playing a deeper game, I'll know soon enough. How? Because my source is already verifying your identity. If you're FBI, he'll confirm it within the hour. If you're Blackthorn, he'll confirm that too. And then James let the sentence hang. His wolf's growl probably finished it adequately. Sarah held his gaze. You're used to people being afraid of you. Most people have better survival instincts. I have excellent survival instincts. That's why I'm not afraid, Sarah's voice carried steel. I've stared down terrorists and traffickers and senators who thought Omega meant weak. You don't scare me, Colonel. You just piss me off. James felt something shift in his chest, something that hadn't moved in 5 years. Good. Fear makes people stupid. Anger makes them sharp. Come on. The command center smelled like coffee and gun oil. Pack members moved with purpose. Radio chatter, computer screens displaying security feeds, the organized chaos of a military operation. James guided Sarah through to his office, aware of the stairs. An Omega in flex cuffs was unusual. An Omega who smelled like mate was catastrophic. Eric was already there, leaning against the desk. Boss. Medical's checking the packages. No serious injuries. Dehydration, minor contusions. The youngest is 17. Sacramento. Taken 3 weeks ago from her high school parking lot. Get her home. James moved to his desk, pulled out a knife and cut Sarah's flex cuffs. Family's probably frantic, already on it. Eric's eyes flicked to Sarah. Agent Novak, I apologize for the rough extraction. You were doing your job. Sarah rubbed her wrists. I disagree with the methods, but I understand the motivation. Eric nodded. Ghost, we've got a problem. Thermal imaging picked up drone activity about 6 miles out. Consumer-grade DJI probably. But somebody's watching the perimeter. Blackthorn. Or feds who tracked Agent Novak's signal. Eric pulled out a tablet, showed footage of a small quadcopter circling at distance. It backed off when our patrol approached. No hostile action. Sarah moved to look at the screen. That's not Bureau tech. We use fixed wing for surveillance. And I don't have a tracker. I was undercover. Blackthorn, then. James felt the tactical map forming in his mind. They're confirming the convoy was hit, checking to see if we recovered cargo, which means they'll escalate. Sarah's voice carried the flat certainty of someone who'd studied the enemy. Volkov doesn't tolerate losses. If he thinks you're disrupting his operations, he'll retaliate. Let him. James's wolf wanted the fight, craved it. We've been dancing around each other for 3 years. Maybe it's time to stop dancing. Eric cleared his throat. Boss, if Blackthorn escalates, we're talking about a war. Their resources are finite. James cut him off. They're criminals, not a nation state. We hit them hard enough, fast enough, they'll collapse. You don't know that. Sarah's tone sharpened. I've been studying Blackthorn for 3 years. They've got political connections, money. Senator Kane's been running interference for them in Congress. James went very still. Richard Kane, Montana senator, the same. Sarah watched him carefully. You know him? We've met. Territorial disputes. He's been pushing legislation to revoke PAC sovereignty, let federal authorities operate inside our borders without permission. I thought it was standard anti-wolf politics. You're saying he's connected to trafficking? I'm saying money flows from Blackthorn, shell corporations, to Kane's super PAC. I'm saying he's blocked 3 bills that would have increased penalties for Omega trafficking. And I'm saying his chief of staff was photographed at a Blackthorn auction 2 years ago. James looked at Eric. Get me everything on Kane. Financial records, travel history, known associates. If he's dirty, I want proof. Already compiling. Eric's fingers flew across his phone. But boss, if we're going after a sitting senator, then we better have ironclad evidence. James turned back to Sarah. You're 8 months undercover. You have documentation reports, wire transfers, photos, all on an encrypted drive. Sarah paused. Which was in my bag, which was in the truck, which is now at the bottom of a ravine. Eric winced. We can send divers in the morning. James checked his watch. 2300. We're not doing a nighttime recovery with Blackthorn drones circling. He looked at Sarah. You remember what was in those reports, every word. Photographic memory, blessing and curse. Sarah's voice carried exhaustion. But without the physical evidence, it's just my testimony. Hearsay. Better than nothing. James moved to a filing cabinet, pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses. Debrief. Everything you know about Blackthorn's structure, operations, and connections. We'll record it, get it transcribed. Worst case, it's intelligence we can act on. Best case, you remember enough detail to reconstruct prosecutable evidence. Sarah took the offered glass. You're very trusting for someone who thought I might be enemy. You're very composed for someone who just watched their operation burn. James poured. To enemies of my enemies, may they die screaming. Sarah's lips twitched. That's dark. That's realistic. James raised his glass. Eric did the same. They drank. The whiskey was good, 16-year Lagavulin, smoky and sharp. Sarah coughed slightly. Her tolerance was trained but rusty. When she set down the glass, something in her posture had shifted. Less FBI agent, more tired soldier. Blackthorn Syndicate. She started without preamble. Run by Dmitry Volkov, former Spetsnaz, 64 years old. He immigrated in 1997, established himself in security consulting, then pivoted to trafficking around 2010. Targets Omega specifically, particularly Silver Moon bloodline. Clients include foreign nationals, domestic clients who want specific genetics, and genetic research firms. Genetic research, James leaned forward. Explain. Silver Moon Omegas produce offspring with enhanced neural development, faster processing speed, better pattern recognition. Militarily, it's gold. Volkov's been selling genetic samples, blood tissue, ovi, to labs that are trying to isolate the genes responsible. Think designer babies, but for tactical intelligence. Jesus, Eric's voice was hollow. How many samples? At least 200 over 5 years. Sarah's jaw tightened. Most from Omegas who didn't survive the harvesting. Blackthorn's not just trafficking for exploitation. They're trafficking for science. And the scientists paying for it include DoD contractors. Our own Defense Department. James felt his wolf snarl. Why? Because enhanced soldiers are worth billions in R&D budgets. Because the Pentagon's been trying to create super soldiers since World War II. Because somebody decided Omega genetics were the key. James stood paced to the window. The compound spread below, lit by security floods. His people. His responsibility. And somewhere out there, Blackthorn was cutting apart Omegas like lab rats. We need names. Every scientist, every lab, every DoD contractor. If we're burning Blackthorn, we burn the whole chain. I had names. They're at the bottom of the ravine. Sarah's frustration bled through. But I can give you the primary contact. Dr. Marcus Chen, Stanford Department of Genetic Engineering. He's been Blackthorn's main buyer. Volkov called him the architect. Eric was typing. Got him. Published extensively on gene editing. DARPA grants going back 15 years. Jesus boss, he's legitimate. Peer-reviewed journals. University credentials, which makes him untouchable. Sarah drained her glass. You can't just raid Stanford. And even if you could, Chen's smart enough to compartmentalize. He'll have cut-out shell companies, plausible deniability for days. James turned from the window. Who's your FBI handler? Special Agent Tom Morrison. Missoula Field Office. 20-year veteran. Good cop. Is he compromised? Sarah hesitated. If my operation was burned 8 months ago and Morrison was my handler, then either he didn't know or he's dirty. Which I think he didn't know, but I'm not betting my life on it. Sarah looked at James. You said you had a source inside Blackthorn. I need to meet him. Her, James corrected, and she'll be here within the hour. She's en route. How deep is she? Deep enough that Volkov trusts her with auction logistics. Not deep enough for the genetic operation. That's above her access level. James moved back to his desk. But she's pulled 12 Omegas out in the last year. Fake transfers, dead paperwork. Ghosts who never existed. She's the reason we hit that convoy tonight. And you trust her with my life. James held Sarah's gaze. With my pack's lives. She's proven herself a dozen times over. Eric's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. She's at the gate. 2 minutes. Good. James poured another round. Agent Novak, you're about to meet someone who sacrificed everything to fight Blackthorn from the inside. Show her respect, and she'll give you the intelligence you lost in that ravine. The office door opened. The woman who entered was young, maybe 30, with the kind of beauty that would have made her valuable in Blackthorn's markets. Dark hair pulled back severe, eyes that had seen too much. She wore tactical gear and moved like someone trained in close-quarters combat. Ghost. Her voice was steady. Package delivered. The Omega from Sacramento's on her way home. Her family's been notified. Good work, Natasha. James gestured to Sarah. This is Special Agent Sarah Novak, FBI. She's been undercover in Blackthorn for 8 months. Natasha's expression didn't change. I know, I've seen her file. Volkov had her marked as disposal for the Vegas auction. She looked at Sarah. Your lucky ghost source is better than the bureaus. Sarah stood slowly. You're the source. I'm a lot of things. Natasha moved to the desk, pulled out a flash drive. This is everything from Blackthorn's servers as of this morning. Financial records, client lists, auction schedules, genetic sample manifests. If it's digital, it's on here. Sarah stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. That's how by being very good at my bowing and very willing to, if I get caught. Natasha's smile was sharp. Volkov thinks I'm in Vegas right now coordinating the auction. Instead, I'm here giving you everything you need to dismantle his operation. James took the drive. How much time do we have before he knows you're burned 48 hours? Maybe less. I covered my tracks, but Volkov's not stupid. He'll run security audits after the convoy hit. When he finds the data breach, he'll know it was internal. Natasha looked at James, which means I'm done. No more undercover. No more intel. This is my last drop. You've done enough. James's voice carried weight. More than enough. You want extraction? We'll set you up anywhere in the country. New identity, new life. I want Volkov dead. Natasha's eyes were flat. I want every client on that list prosecuted. I want the lab shut down and the scientists in prison. That's what I want. Then we'll make it happen. Eric moved to the computer, plugged in the flash drive. Let's see what we've got. The screen filled with folders, financials, operations, clients, genetics, personnel. Each folder contained hundreds of files. Eric clicked through, his expression darkening. He stopped. Boss, this is the whole operation. Account numbers, wire transfers, names, addresses. This is everything. Not everything. Natasha's voice was quiet. The top clients pay cash. The highest level genetic buyers don't put names in digital records. And Volkov's personal security is handled offline. But it's 90% of the network. 90% will burn it down. James felt something like hope, a foreign sensation. Sarah, you're 8 months underground this match. What you found, Sarah, was reading over Eric's shoulder. Her face pale. This is more than I found. Jesus, there are senators on this list. Judges. EEOs. She pointed to a name. That's the CFO of one of the largest biotech firms in the country. Proof enough, James watched her process. Or do you still think we blew up your investigation for nothing? Sarah turned. You saved my life. And you've got more evidence than the bureaus collected in 3 years. So no, Colonel, I don't think you blew up my investigation. I think you just made it prosecutable. James felt his wolf settle slightly. Good. Because now we need to move fast. Blackthorn knows the convoy was hit. They'll be scrambling. We have maybe 48 hours before they destroy evidence, move assets, disappear into the network. You need the Bureau, Sarah's voice was firm. This is too big for PAC justice. You need federal prosecutors, RICO statutes, multi-jurisdiction cooperation. We need both. James looked at Eric. Get Morrison on the phone. Secure line. Tell him we have a situation that requires immediate attention and his agent is safe but not available for direct contact. Boss Eric's tone carried warning. If Morrison's compromised, then we'll know soon enough. James turned to Natasha. You're staying here. Guest quarters, full security. Consider it protective custody until we know Volkov's response. I can help. Natasha's protest was immediate. I know the operation inside and out, which makes you invaluable and vulnerable. James's tone allowed no argument. You've done your part. Let us do ours. Natasha's jaw worked, but she nodded. Eric will show you to quarters. Get food, rest. We'll debrief more tomorrow. She left with Eric. The office felt larger with just James and Sarah. The mate scent was still there, still pulling at instincts James had thought died with Emily. He ignored it with the same discipline that had kept him alive through 3 decades of combat. You're not what I expected. Sarah's voice broke the silence. When they briefed me on pack territories on AlphaKings, I expected, she gestured vaguely, more traditional, more old world, more barbaric. James allowed himself a small smile. We're wolves, not Neanderthals. We adapted. Modern military structure, modern technology. The only thing old world about us is we still believe in protecting our own. By executing traffickers without trial. By stopping them before they can hurt anyone else. James moved to the window again. You asked earlier if I see myself as the good guy. Honest answer, I don't. I'm just the guy who shows up. The guy who does what needs doing because somebody has to. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. James watched the compound. I've killed 217 people in my life. Military service plus the trafficking operations. I remember every face, every shot, and I sleep fine at night because every one of them was trying to hurt someone weaker. You tell me if that makes me good or just necessary. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. My husband used to say something similar, that there were wolves and there were sheep and somebody had to protect the sheep from predators. He died protecting sheep. Marathon finish line. 3 people he shielded with his body survived. I'm sorry, James meant it. That kind of courage gets you killed. Sarah's voice cracked slightly, gets you a folded flag and a gravestone and leaves your wife wondering if courage is just another word for stupid. James turned. She was crying. Not sobs, just tears tracking down her face. Exhaustion and grief and 8 months of pretending to be someone else catching up. He moved without thinking, his wolf driving him closer. When he reached her, she didn't pull away, didn't flinch, just stood there, tears falling, shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. He put his arms around her. She stiffened, then collapsed into him. Her scent mate, the wolf insisted, mate, 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 wrapped around him. Her body fit against his like it had been designed for that specific purpose. And for the first time in 5 years, James felt something other than the empty space where Emily had been. I'm sorry, Sarah's voice was muffled against his chest. I don't usually. You've been undercover for 8 months, nearly got sold at auction and found out your operation was burned from the start. You're entitled to break a little. James kept his voice gentle. His hands moved on her back, soothing circles. You're safe here, I promise. You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. I just killed 26 people to make sure you were safe. James felt her breath hitch. I'll kill 200 more if that's what it takes. That's not a romantic declaration, Agent Novak. That's just tactical reality. Sarah pulled back enough to look up at him. Why you don't know me? Because you're an Omega in my territory. That makes you mine to protect. And because James stopped. The truth sat in his throat like broken glass. Because his wolf knew, had known from the moment her scent hit his nose. Because fate or biochemistry or whatever drove the mate bond had decided she was his second chance, and he was 58 years old and too fucking tired to fight it. Because Sarah's eyes searched his face. Because somebody has to protect the sheep. James released her, step back. The distance hurt. His wolf snarled, I'll show you to quarters. You need food, shower, sleep. Tomorrow we plan how to burn Blackthorn down. I need to contact Morrison. Tomorrow, James moved to the door. Tonight you rest. That's an order from your host, not from an alpha. You can't order me around. I'm federal, and you're exhausted and running on adrenaline and whiskey. Sarah, please. James turned back. His use of her first name felt intimate, dangerous. Let tonight be about not dying. Tomorrow we'll fight about jurisdiction and protocols and everything else. But tonight, just rest. Sarah's shoulders sagged. She looked smaller suddenly. Older. More human. Fine. 24 hours. Then I'm contacting Morrison and we're doing this properly. Deal. James opened the door. Guest quarters are in the west wing. Private bathroom, lockable door. Eric will post guards outside for your protection, not to keep you prisoner. How do I know the difference? Because if I wanted you prisoner, I'd use the cells in the basement. James's tone was dry. The guest quarters have better water pressure. Sarah almost smiled. That's either reassuring or deeply concerning. Welcome to pack territory. It's both. James led her through the compound. Pack members nodded respectfully. A few stared at Sarah with open curiosity. By morning, everyone would know the AlphaKing had brought home an Omega who smelled like mate. By tomorrow night, the betting pools would start on how long until formal bonding. James had lived this before after Emily. The weight of pack expectations, the pressure to produce an heir, the constant awareness that his personal life was political. But Emily had been pack, had understood the dynamics. Sarah was human-raised FBI. This would be different, harder, assuming it happened at all. They reached the guest quarters. James opened the door, checked the room habit from too many years of clearing spaces before occupying them. Clean. The bed was made with military precision. The bathroom showed steam on the mirror, meaning someone had preheated the water. Eric. James made a mental note to thank his second. The man thought of everything. There's a phone on the nightstand. Dial 9 for kitchen. They'll bring you whatever you want. Dial 0 for security. Don't try calling outside, the lines are monitored. James watched Sarah take in the space. Not a prison, just a precaution until we know Blackthorn's response. Understood. Sarah moved to the window. 3rd floor. Probably a 30-foot drop to the ground. Windows reinforced. She turned back. You've thought about containment. I've thought about protection. James met her eyes. You're not a prisoner, Sarah, but you are a target. Blackthorn knows you were on that convoy. They'll assume you're either dead or rescued. Either way, you're a threat to their operation. If they get word you're here, they'll come for me. They'll try. James's voice hardened. They won't succeed. This compound has survived 3 assault attempts in 5 years. We're dug in, fortified, and we train for siege scenarios monthly. You're safer here than anywhere else in the country, except with the FBI. The FBI couldn't keep you safe for 8 months. I did it in 3 hours. James moved to the door. Get some rest. I'll send food up. Tomorrow's going to be long. He left before she could argue. The hallway was quiet. Eric emerged from the shadows, his expression concerned. You good, boss, fine. James didn't meet his eyes. Post guards, 2-man rotation. Nobody enters without my authorization. She's mate. Eric's voice was flat. You know it. I know it. The pack will know it by dawn. Doesn't matter. James started walking. His quarters were on the opposite end of the compound. Maximum distance. She's federal. She's human-raised. And I'm 58 years old and spent my second chance on this operation. There's no you're doing the noble thing, pushing her away because you think you're too old, too damaged. Eric kept pace. I've known you for 30 years, Ghost, since we were stupid kids in basic, and I've never seen you run from anything except feelings. I'm not running, I'm being practical. James stopped. She has a life, a career, goals that don't include being queen to a pack of wolves in Montana. And I have responsibilities that don't include dragging an unwilling mate into politics she doesn't understand. Did you ask her what she wants? She wants to burn Blackthorn, same as us. That's enough common ground. James resumed walking. The rest is biology, pheromones, and instinct and chemistry that doesn't give a damn about compatibility. Emily is dead, James's voice cut, and nothing changes that. Not bonding Sarah, not pretending I can have a second chance. Emily died because I was too slow, too human when she needed the wolf. I won't make that mistake again. So you'll be alone forever. I'll be king. That's enough. James reached his quarters, key card ready. Get some sleep, Eric. Tomorrow we start planning Blackthorn's end. He closed the door on his friend's protest. The room was dark, silent. James didn't turn on lights, just moved to the window and looked out at the compound. His territory, his responsibility. His mate was 3 floors below and 100 yards away, close enough to smell, too far to touch. The wolf howled inside him. James ignored it. He'd spent 30 years ignoring instincts that would get people killed. This was just one more. The whiskey bottle on his desk called. James poured 4 fingers, no ice. Drank it standing at the window. The burn down his throat was familiar, comforting. Emily used to hate when he drank alone. Said it meant he was drowning something he should be talking about. He poured another glass. His phone buzzed. Text from Eric Morrison's en route. ETA 6 hours. He's bringing Assistant Director Carson. High-level response. James typed back. Good. We'll need their weight for this. Another text, also Sarah's asking for you. Says she can't sleep. James stared at the message. Every instinct screamed to go to her. The wolf wanted it. The man, older, wiser, more damaged, knew better. He typed, send her warm milk and melatonin. I'm busy. Eric's response, you're drinking alone. I can smell it from here. James didn't reply, set his phone down, poured the rest of the bottle into his glass. The compound settled into night watch routine. Patrols moving, lights dimming. Somewhere Sarah was lying awake in a strange room, probably still wearing her torn clothes, definitely plotting how to regain control of an operation that had spun away from her. She was FBI. She'd hate being sidelined, hate being protected, hate everything about this situation except the end result. James understood. He'd spent 3 decades hating situations he couldn't control, missions that went sideways, outcomes that cost too much. But he'd learned to adapt, to make the call, to do what needed doing and live with the consequences. Sarah would learn too, or she wouldn't. Either way, Blackthorn was burning. That was the mission, the only thing that mattered. His phone buzzed again. Not Eric this time. Unknown number. James considered ignoring it, but unknown numbers at 0:30 meant trouble. He answered without speaking. Ghost. The voice was electronically masked, distorted, but the cadence was familiar. You hit the convoy. We recovered 6 packages. James kept his voice neutral. All alive, all safe. You recovered 7. 1 wasn't on the manifest. The voice paused. Volkov's very interested in her whereabouts. She's federal. Under my protection. James felt the threat assessment shifting. How interested enough to authorize a recovery operation? You have 48 hours before he moves assets. After that, she becomes a priority target. Retrieve or eliminate. Noted. James watched the compound. Any other updates? Volkov knows he has a leak. He's running internal security. I can't maintain cover much longer. This is my last call. The voice cracked slightly. It's been an honor, Ghost. You're not burned yet. James's grip tightened on the phone. Stay dark. Don't take risks. We're moving against Blackthorn within 48 hours. You just need to survive until then. If I don't, you will. James made it an order. That's not a request. You've saved too many lives to die now. Understood. The line went dead. James set the phone down carefully. His second source. The one deeper than Natasha. The one who'd been inside Volkov's inner circle for 18 months. The one whose identity James protected absolutely because exposure meant death by torture. 48 hours. Less than ideal, but workable. If they moved fast, coordinated with FBI-built prosecutable cases while hitting Blackthorn's infrastructure, the window exploded inward. James dropped and rolled in the same motion. Glass rained down. His hand found the Sig Sauer holstered under his desk. 3-round center mass before the first shard hit carpet. The shooter human male tactical gear dropped with a hole where his chest had been. Second shooter came through the door. James pivoted, fired twice. Headshots. The man fell. Alarm screamed. The compound lit up like Christmas. James's phone exploded with alerts. His radio crackled, Eric's voice steady despite the chaos. We're under attack. Multiple hostiles. North and west perimeters breached. Sarah. The thought came with crystal clarity. They were here for Sarah. James was moving before conscious thought finished. Out the door past the dead second shooter, down the hallway at a dead run. His wolf was clawing out, wanting the change, wanting teeth and claws. James denied it. Needed hands for weapons. Needed human brain for tactics. The guest quarters hallway was a war zone. 4 guards down, blood on the walls. The door to Sarah's room hung open, splintered. James cleared the corner, Sig up, in tracking. Empty. The room was empty. Window still intact. Bed unused. No sign of Sarah. Eric appeared, rifle up. Boss, where is she? James's voice came out more growl than words. Security footage shows her leaving the room 15 minutes ago. Requested medical supplies. Said she couldn't sleep. She's in the clinic. The clinic was basement level. Reinforced. Secured. If hostiles were breaching upper floors, she was probably safer there than anywhere else. James forced himself to think tactically. How many hostiles? 12 confirmed, maybe more. They hit simultaneously northwest and south perimeters. Coordinated. Professional. Eric's jaw was tight. Blackthorn's not playing. They never do. James moved toward the stairs. Get defensive positions locked down. Nobody enters who isn't verified pack. Shoot first, verify after. We've got wounded clinic. Go. James took the stairs 3 at a time. His wolf was screaming now. Mate in danger. Protect. Kill. The primal imperative drowned everything else. The basement level was chaos. Medical staff rushing, wounded pack members bleeding, the smell of copper and antiseptic, and underneath it all, that scent. Libraries and chemistry and mate. Sarah was in the center, her hands steady despite the blood working while a wolf with a gut shot. She'd found scrubs somewhere, her hair was pulled back. When she looked up and saw James, her eyes were fierce. I need more gauze. NO negative. He's hemorrhaging. James grabbed the supplies, passed them over. You should be upstairs, in your quarters. Your quarters got shot up. I heard the gunfire. Figured basement was safer. Sarah's hands moved with professional efficiency. She'd done this before. Battlefield medicine. Besides, you needed a medic. Your doctor's got 3 critical patients and no help. You're FBI, not a surgeon. I'm a field agent with trauma training. Close enough. Sarah clamped off a bleeder, her focus absolute. Now either help or get out of my way. James helped, held retractors, passed instruments. Watch this Omega, this brilliant, stubborn, entirely inappropriate Omega, save one of his pack members with the same cold precision he'd used clearing a building. When the wolf finally stabilized, when Sarah stepped back and peeled off bloody gloves, James realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just his mate, she was his partner. The attack ended an hour before dawn, 12 hostiles dead, 7 pack members wounded, 2 critical, 0 Omega casualties. Blackthorn's message was clear. They knew where Sarah was, and they were willing to burn down a pack compound to retrieve her. James stood in the command center staring at security footage. The assault had been professional. Ex-military probably. Coordinated entry, suppressing fire. Objective focus, they'd gone straight for Sarah's quarters, ignoring easier targets. When they'd found it empty, they'd started a fighting retreat. Volkov didn't want Sarah dead. He wanted her back, which meant she had information that threatened him more than her 8 months of FBI reports. What am I missing? James spoke to Eric, who was reviewing tactical logs. What does she know that's worth this? Eric pulled up Natasha's flash drive. Been thinking about that. Look at the genetic manifests, all the Omegas Blackthorn's trafficked. Notice anything? James scanned the list. 200 names, dates, locations. Then he saw it. Sarah Novak, 8 months ago, slated for genetic harvesting, not auction. They didn't recruit her for information. They recruited her for her DNA. Eric's voice was grim. She's Silver Moon. Her genetics are worth millions to the right buyer. The FBI infiltration was Blackthorn playing along, keeping her close until they could harvest her. Jesus, James felt his wolf snarl. They were going to cut her apart for genetic samples. Yeah. Eric zoomed in on notes. Says here she's got a rare variant. Enhanced neural pathways plus something about pheromone production that affects alpha decision-making. She's basically the genetic holy grail for anyone wanting to breed super soldiers. She doesn't know, James realized. She thinks she was undercover hunting them. She doesn't know they were hunting her. Do we tell her everything? James straightened. She deserves to know what she's up against. Dawn broke over the compound. Damage crews worked on the north perimeter. Medical staff moved the wounded to secure locations. James found Sarah in the clinic washing blood off her hands. She looked exhausted, wired. The adrenaline crash was coming. We need to talk. James kept his voice gentle. The conference room. Now, Sarah dried her hands. If this is about me leaving my quarters, it's about why Blackthorn attacked. James held the door. Please. They walked in silence. The compound was stirring day shift, replacing night watch. The smell of coffee drifted from the cafeteria. Normal morning routines layering over extraordinary violence. James had lived this dichotomy for decades. Sarah was just learning it. The conference room held Eric, Natasha, and a laptop displaying Blackthorn's files. Sarah took a seat, wariness in every line. What's going on? Her eyes moved between them. Why the formal debrief? James pulled up the genetic manifest. When you went undercover, you thought Blackthorn recruited you for information. Access to FBI databases, insight into federal investigations. That's what Volkov said. My Silver Moon genetics made me valuable for auction, so he wanted me close trusted. I'd provide information he'd protect me from harvesting. He lied. James turned the screen. You were never going to auction. You were scheduled for genetic harvesting from day one. Your FBI cover was Blackthorn, letting you think you had control while they positioned you for lab work. Sarah went very still. That's not, she leaned forward, reading. Her face drained of color. Oh my God, you're not just Silver Moon. You're a variant. Natasha's voice was quiet. Your genetic profile shows enhanced neural pathways and pheromone production that makes alphas more susceptible to suggestion. You're not just breeding stock. You're a weapon. I'm a scientist. Sarah's voice shook. I study genetics. I'm not. You're both. James sat across from her. Your FBI training, your field work, your analytical skills, those are learned. But your genetics, those are natural. And they're worth approximately $50 million to the right buyer. 50? Sarah stopped. Her hands were shaking. That's why they attacked. Not for information. For me. For your DNA. Eric pulled up another file. We intercepted communications during the assault. Volkov's orders were explicit. Recover Agent Novak alive. Terminate all others. They were willing to lose 12 operators to retrieve you. James watched Sarah process. Saw the moment she understood the magnitude. She wasn't a federal agent investigating trafficking. She was prey that had walked into the trap and spent 8 months thinking she was the hunter. I need to leave. Sarah stood abruptly. If I'm here, I'm endangering your pack. Blackthorn will attack again. Probably. James didn't sugarcoat it. And if you leave, they'll track you. Hunt you. Eventually catch you. Your best chance is here with us until we dismantle their operation completely. You can't protect me forever. I don't need forever. James held her gaze. I need 48 hours. Morrison's en route with federal resources. We use that time to coordinate a simultaneous strike. FBI hits Blackthorn's legal fronts. We hit their infrastructure. Fast, hard, complete. They won't have time to regroup. And if it doesn't work, Sarah's voice was sharp. If Volkov escapes, if the network survives, then what I spend my life running, then we keep hunting until there's nothing left to run from. James stood. But it will work, because we have their files, we have their client lists, we have everything Natasha pulled from their servers. We hit them in the daylight with federal warrants and public exposure, and they collapse. You're very confident. I'm very motivated. James moved closer. His wolf pulled at him. That mate scent. You're an omega in my territory, under my protection. That means something to wolves. It means I'll kill everyone between you and safety. It means I'll burn Blackthorn to ash and salt the earth. It means you're not alone in this. Sarah's eyes searched his face. Why you don't know me? This isn't your fight. You made it my fight when you showed up in my territory. James kept his voice steady. And you became my responsibility when I decided to pull you out of that convoy. I don't do things halfway, Agent Novak. If I'm protecting you, I'm protecting you, all in. The office door opened. Eric entered, his expression urgent. Boss Morrison's here, 30 minutes early. He's got the assistant director and a full tactical team. They're at the gate. Let them in. James turned to Sarah. You're about to get your wish. Federal Resources Jurisdiction Authority. Now we see if the Bureau's ready to move as fast as we need them to. Morrison was exactly what James expected. Early 50s, fit, competent. The kind of cop who'd survived 20 years by being smart and careful. He entered the conference room with Assistant Director Carson, older, grayer, carrying the weight of bureaucracy. Behind them, 6 agents in tactical gear. Colonel Maddox, Morrison's handshake was firm. Thank you for securing Agent Novak. She secured herself. Fought off traffickers, infiltrated their organization, and spent 8 months gathering intelligence. We just provided extraction when her cover was burned. James gestured to chairs. Please, we have a lot to cover. Carson sat heavily. His eyes were on Sarah. Agent Novak, your report stopped 3 days ago. We were concerned. My reports were being monitored. Sarah's voice was flat. Blackthorn knew I was FBI from the start. Everything I sent you was controlled information. They were feeding the Bureau false intelligence while expanding operations. That's Carson stopped. Do you have proof, everything you need? James pulled up the flash drive data, financial records, operation logs, client lists. This is Blackthorn's entire network pulled from their servers by an asset who's been inside for 18 months. Morrison leaned forward, scanning the screen. His expression tightened. Jesus Christ, that's Senator Kane and Judge Williams. And he stopped. Sir, this is half of Washington's power structure, which is why we need federal coordination. James clicked through files. PAC justice is effective, but it's limited. We can take down Blackthorn's operational infrastructure. You need to take down their political protection. How did you get this? Carson's suspicion was obvious. This is illegal surveillance. Hacking. No federal judge will issue warrants based on stolen evidence. The evidence wasn't stolen. Natasha spoke from the corner. I work for Blackthorn. I copied files I had legitimate access to. That's not hacking. That's whistleblowing. Who are you? Morrison's hand moved toward his weapon. She's under my protection. James's voice carried weight. She's also the reason we've rescued 200 Omegas in 5 years. You want her identity? You get it after Blackthorn's in custody. Not before that. Carson and Morrison exchanged glances. The assistant director spoke carefully. Colonel, we appreciate your cooperation, but the Bureau has protocols. We can't move on this intelligence without proper vetting, and we certainly can't coordinate with vigilantes no matter how well-intentioned. James felt his patience fracture. You have protocols. Blackthorn has 50 million reasons to kill the woman sitting next to you. We don't have time for vetting and committees and bureaucratic ass-covering. We have 48 hours before Volkov moves assets and disappears. We need to do this properly. Carson's tone was final. By the book. Legal. Your book got Sarah Novak marked for genetic harvesting. James stood. Your protocols let Blackthorn operate for 5 years with senators running interference. Your legal approach has resulted in 0 prosecutions while 200 Omegas died in labs. So forgive me, Assistant Director, if I don't trust your book. The room went silent. Morrison looked uncomfortable. Carson's face was red. Sarah stood. Gentlemen, with respect, Colonel Maddox is right. I spent 8 months following protocols, gathering evidence properly, building prosecutable cases. And Blackthorn knew every move I made because they had someone inside the Bureau feeding them information. That's a serious accusation. Carson's voice was cold. It's the only explanation. Sarah's voice didn't waver. I was careful, professional, and they still burned me, which means either I'm incompetent and my records suggest otherwise, or someone in the chain of custody compromised my operation. Morrison stood. Sir, if there's a leak, we'll investigate internally. Carson cut him off. But that doesn't change jurisdiction. This is a federal matter. Omega trafficking, interstate commerce, RICO violations. The Bureau has authority, and I have sovereign territory. James moved to the window. Inside these borders, I have final say. You want to coordinate? Excellent. We'll share intelligence. We'll provide tactical support. But you don't come into my land and tell me how to protect my people. This isn't about territorial pissing contests. Carson's frustration showed. This is about rule of law. Your law allows senators to protect traffickers. My law puts bullets in slavers' heads. James turned. You tell me which one saves more lives. Eric cleared his throat. Boss Morrison, Assistant Director, we're wasting time in arguing jurisdiction while Blackthorn fortifies. Can we focus on the actual problem, smart man? James looked at Morrison. You seem reasonable. What do you need from us to move forward? Morrison glanced at Carson, then spoke carefully. Intelligence. Everything on that drive properly documented. Witness statements from rescued Omegas. Chain of custody for physical evidence. And assurance that any action we take won't be compromised by PAC operations running simultaneously. We can provide all of that. James sat again. But we need speed. Warrants issued within 24 hours. Raids coordinated for maximum impact. Media coverage to prevent disappearing evidence. This needs to be public, fast, and overwhelming. I can make that happen. Morrison's voice carried conviction. But I need the assistant director's authorization. All eyes turned to Carson. The older man's jaw worked. Finally, I need to make calls. Talk to DOJ. This is politically sensitive. Politically sensitive, Sarah's voice cut. People are dying. Omegas are being cut apart in labs. Children are being sold to the highest bidder. And you're worried about political sensitivity? Agent Novak Carson started. Dr. Novak. Sarah's correction was sharp. I have a PhD in genetics. And I'm telling you, the research being done with Blackthorn's genetic samples is creating bioweapons, enhanced soldiers, designer humans. If we don't stop this now, we're not just failing to save current victims. We're enabling the militarization of human genetics. The room went quiet. Carson looked at the files on the screen, at Natasha still in the corner, at James, who met his gaze steadily. 24 hours. Carson spoke slowly. I'll get you warrants. But Colonel, if your PAC operations compromise federal prosecutions, I'll have you arrested for obstruction. Fair. James extended his hand. And if your federal bureaucracy lets Blackthorn escape, I'll handle it my way. They shook. The treaty was tenuous, fragile, but it was something. The next 18 hours were controlled chaos. FBI agents setting up operations centers, PAC members providing intelligence, Morrison's team cross-referencing Blackthorn's files with federal databases. Sarah worked alongside bureau analysts, her photographic memory filling in gaps where the digital evidence was incomplete. James coordinated with Eric, planning the PAC's role. They'd hit Blackthorn's operational sites, warehouses, transfer stations, the Idaho facility where genetic research happened. FBI would take down the front companies and arrest the political conspirators. Synchronized, overwhelming force. Natasha had disappeared into protective custody, her identity shielded by federal marshals. But before she left, she'd pulled James aside. Ghost, there's something you should know, her voice was quiet. About Sarah, her genetic profile, it's not just valuable for what it is, it's valuable for what it unlocks. Explain. James felt dread pooling in his gut. Silver Moon genetics are a key. They unlock dormant traits in other bloodlines. Her DNA combined with certain alpha genetics could produce offspring with abilities we've never seen. Enhanced strength, sensory processing, tactical intelligence. She's not just a weapon, she's a catalyst. Which alphas? James knew the answer before he asked. Any true alpha. But specifically, Natasha hesitated. Your bloodline is the most compatible. Volkov has files on you. Family history, combat records, genetic analysis from your military service. If he gets Sarah, if he forces bonding, the offspring would be worth more than 50 million. James finished. They'd be priceless. Natasha nodded. I'm sorry, Ghost. I know this complicates things. Everything was already complicated. James watched her leave with the marshals. The weight of responsibility pressed down. Sarah wasn't just his mate by bond. She was his mate by design. Genetics and evolution, and whatever cosmic joke decided these things, had engineered them for each other. He found Sarah in the communications room arguing with an FBI analyst about cell tower data. Her hands moved as she talked, mapping network connections on a whiteboard. She'd found clean clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt that was too big. Her hair was still pulled back. She looked exhausted and fierce and entirely herself. The analyst left. Sarah turned, saw James. You're staring. Sorry. James moved into the room. How's it going? We've identified 43 clients based on financial transfers, another 30 through auction attendance records. Morrison's getting warrants for all of them. Sarah gestured to the whiteboard, but the genetic research is harder to track. The scientists use cutouts, shell companies, Swiss bank accounts. We might get Chen, but the others. We'll get them eventually. James studied the board. You're good at this. Pattern recognition, analysis. I have a PhD and 20 years of field experience. I'd better be good at it. Sarah's voice carried fatigue. But James, even if we shut down Blackthorn, even if we arrest every client and close every lab, the genetics are out there. My DNA is probably in a dozen facilities by now. Someone will try again, then we'll stop them again. James moved closer. That's how this works. We don't get final victories. We get battles. Today's battle is Blackthorn, and tomorrow's will be whoever tries to take their place. That's bleak. That's realistic. James reached out, stopped himself. His wolf wanted to touch her, comfort her, but she wasn't his. Not really. The genetics said they were compatible. The bond said she was mate, but Sarah Novak was her own person, FBI, human raised. with a life and career and autonomy that didn't include being claimed by a 58-year-old AlphaKing. Why are you really doing this? Sarah's voice was quiet. The rescue, the protection coordinating with the FBI. You could have just killed the traffickers and moved on. Why bring me here? Why fight for me specifically? Because James stopped. The truth was complicated. Because your mate felt reductive. Because someone has to was insufficient. Because I'm tired of losing people. I should have protected was too honest. Because you remind me of my wife. The words came out before he could stop them. She was a fighter too. Wouldn't back down. Wouldn't accept protection if it meant surrendering autonomy. She died because I tried to respect that. Tried to give her space to be herself. And traffickers use that space to take her. So now when I find someone who needs protecting, whether they want it or not, I don't make the same mistake. I protect them, even if they hate me for it. Sarah's expression softened. I don't hate you. You should. James's voice was rough. I blew up your operation, put you in danger by bringing you here, made decisions about your safety without consulting you. You also saved my life. Multiple times. Sarah moved closer, her scentmate wrapped around him. I'm not good at accepting help. My husband used to say I had a martyrdom complex, that I'd rather die heroic than live protected. But James, what you're doing, coordinating with the FBI, risking your pack to take down Blackthorn, making sure the fight is legal in public. That's not paternalistic protection. That's partnership. James looked at her. Really looked. 46 years old, gray threading through her hair, scars on her hands from fieldwork, eyes that had seen too much. She was beautiful in the way warriors were beautiful, carved by experience, hardened by loss, made stronger by survival. I need to tell you something. James took a breath, and you're going to hate it. Sarah waited, patient, FBI trained to extract confessions through silence. You're my mate, genetically. The bond formed the moment I caught your scent at the convoy. I've spent the last 18 hours fighting it because you're federal, you're human-raised, and you have a life that doesn't include being queen to a pack of Montana wolves. James forced himself to continue. But you should know, so you can make informed decisions about what happens next. Sarah's expression didn't change. I know. James blinked. What I'm a geneticist who specializes in omega biology. I've published 3 papers on mate bond neurochemistry. She almost smiled. Did you think I wouldn't recognize the pheromone cascade? The way my body responds to your proximity, I knew within an hour of meeting you. And you didn't say anything, because it doesn't matter. Sarah's voice was firm. Biology isn't destiny. Mate bonds are neurological compatibility, not cosmic fate. We're genetically optimized for each other. That doesn't mean I'm obligated to bond with you any more than you're obligated to claim me. I wasn't planning to claim you. James felt off balance. This wasn't how he'd expected this conversation to go. You're your own person. You get to choose. Good, because I'm choosing to focus on destroying Blackthorn. Sarah turned back to the whiteboard. Whatever happens with the bond, with us, that's secondary. Right now, people are dying, labs are creating bioweapons, and we have 48 hours to stop it. So let's stop it. Everything else can wait. James felt something in his chest unclench. She wasn't running, wasn't demanding he deny the bond or force it. She was just proceeding, focused on the mission, treating the mate bond like any other tactical consideration. You're remarkable. The words slipped out. I'm practical. Sarah glanced at him. And James, for what it's worth, if circumstances were different, if we weren't in the middle of a federal operation in a pack war, I'd be interested in exploring what this bond means. You're not what I expected either. What did you expect, honestly? An entitled alpha who demands submission and treat me like property. Sarah's smile was small. Instead, I got a 58-year-old widower who coordinates with the FBI and asks permission before making tactical decisions. It's refreshing. I'm too old for you. James heard himself say it. You're 46. I'm 58. You should have someone younger. Someone who can what? Keep up. Sarah's voice carried amusement. James, I've read your file. Delta Force. 30 years of combat. You're probably in better shape than most 30-year-olds. And besides, I'm not interested in young. Young is stupid. Young doesn't know what it wants. I want competent, experienced. Someone who's survived enough that they understand survival isn't the same as living. James didn't have a response. The woman in front of him had just dismantled every argument he'd been using to maintain distance, and his wolf was singing. The door opened. Eric entered holding a radio. "Boss, we've got movement. Blackthorn's mobilizing. Volkov's pulling assets back to the Idaho facility. Looks like they're fortifying for siege." How long? James was instantly focused. 6 hours, maybe 8. Morrison's warrants aren't ready yet. If we wait for federal coordination, Blackthorn will be dug in. Then we don't wait. James moved to the command center. Eric, assemble strike teams. Sarah, tell Morrison we're moving now. He can coordinate or catch up, but we're not letting Volkov fortify. James Sarah's protest was immediate. If we move without federal authority, we move under PAC authority. This is my territory, my jurisdiction. Morrison can file paperwork later. James pulled up maps of the Idaho facility. Right now we have a window. We use it. The next 4 hours were tactical preparation. Strike teams briefing, equipment checks, routes planned. The Idaho facility was 60 miles into PAC territory, nestled in wilderness that had once been Cold War military testing grounds. Perfect location for illegal research. Isolated, defensible, and soon to be rubble. Morrison protested, Carson threatened. James ignored both. Sarah provided facility intelligence from her 8 months undercover. Natasha, via encrypted call, confirmed guard positions and security protocols. By the time they rolled out, James had 20 wolves in tactical gear, 4 vehicles, and enough firepower to start a small war. Sarah insisted on coming. James expected no less. She wore borrowed tactical gear and carried a Glock with professional competence. She rode in James's truck, reviewing maps, marking entry points, playing spotter. The facility came into view at dusk. Concrete bunkers, chain link fence, guard towers. It looked military because it had been military once. Now it housed horrors the military would have court-martialed. Eric's voice crackled. "North team in position, south team ready. On your mark, boss." James looked at Sarah. "Last chance. You can stay with the vehicles. This is going to get ugly. I didn't come this far to watch from the parking lot." Sarah chambered around. "Besides, you need my help. I know which bunker holds the genetic samples. Destroy those and you destroy Blackthorn's cash reserve." "Fair point." James keyed his radio. "All teams execute." They hit the facility like a hammer, north and south simultaneously. Suppressed weapons and coordinated fire. Guards dropped before they could raise alarms. James moved with his team toward the main bunker, Sarah at his side. She moved well, better than well. Combat training that went beyond FBI standard. "Where'd you learn to move like that?" James cleared a corner, took down a guard with 2 shots. "My husband was Marsoc. He taught me." Sarah returned fire at a window. Said if I was going to hunt terrorists, I needed to shoot like one. Smart man. James respected that. They reached the main bunker door. Breaching charge. On my mark. The door blew inward. Smoke and concussion. James went through first rifle up. The bunker was a lab. Sterile. White. And in the center, a dozen cylinders holding genetic samples, suspended in liquid nitrogen, labeled with Omega names. Sarah moved to the console, her fingers flying. "I can corrupt the database. Make the samples unusable, even if someone recovers them." "Do it." James covered the door. Eric's team was clearing adjacent bunkers. Gunfire echoed. The operation was going loud. Sarah worked. Her face was tight with concentration. The console beeped. Files deleting. Samples destabilizing. 30 years of Blackthorn's genetic research evaporating in digital fire. Done. Sarah stepped back. Everything's corrupted. Even if they salvage the physical samples, they won't know which Omega they came from or what traits they carry. Good. James turned to leave. Then he saw the man in the doorway. Dmitry Volkov, former Spetsnaz, 64 years old, holding an AK-47 like he was born with it. Ghost. Volkov's accent was thick. "You're persistent. You're finished." James kept his rifle on target. "Facilities taken. Your files are burned. FBI's raiding your front companies as we speak. It's over. It's never over." Volkov smiled. "You rescued 200. I traffic 2,000. You burn 1 facility. I have 3 more. You're fighting the ocean with a bucket old wolf, maybe. James felt Sarah move behind him. But I'll drown you in the process. No. Volkov's eyes moved to Sarah. You won't, because she's too valuable. You won't risk her, and that's your weakness. The rifle shifted, not toward James, towards Sarah. James moved without thinking, placed himself between them. His wolf surged. If Volkov fired, the rounds would hit James first. Touching. Volkov's smile widened. You'd die for her, just like you died for Emily. Too slow then. Too slow now. James felt time stretch. Volkov's finger on the trigger. The tactical calculus, James's vest would stop 2, maybe 3 rounds. The fourth would penetrate. He'd have maybe seconds to return fire. Could he drop Volkov before the shot came from behind? Sarah. Her Glock barked once. Volkov's head snapped back. The AK clattered to the floor. The man who'd trafficked thousands, who'd run Blackthorn like an empire, dropped like a puppet with cut strings. James turned. Sarah stood with her weapon still raised, her hands steady. Her face was calm, professional. She'd made the shot without hesitation. Are you hurt? Her voice was level. Did any rounds hit you? I'm fine. James moved to Volkov's body, confirmed the kill. You shoot like that often. First time I've killed someone. Sarah lowered her weapon. Her hands started shaking now. Adrenaline crash delayed by training. But he was gonna shoot you. So I shot him. James crossed to her, took the Glock gently. You just saved my life. You've saved mine 3 times in 2 days. We're not even close to even. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Does it get easier? No. James holstered her weapon. But you learn to live with it, to make peace with necessary violence. The facility secured within the hour. 12 Blackthorn operatives dead. 4 captured. 0 Omega casualties. The genetic samples were destroyed. The databases corrupted. Physical evidence seized for FBI analysis. By the time Morrison arrived with his tactical team, the fight was over. The assistant director was furious. James didn't care. Sarah stood beside him, exhausted and shaking and alive. That was the only metric that mattered. You've compromised federal prosecutions. Carson's voice was shrill. Extrajudicial killings. Destruction of evidence. This entire operation saved lives and destroyed Blackthorn's infrastructure. James cut him off. Your warrants are still valid. Your raids can proceed. We didn't touch the political conspirators or the front companies. We just took out the operational core. You're welcome. Colonel Maddox, Carson started. Shut up, Richard. Morrison's voice carried weight. The man just did what we couldn't. Destroyed a trafficking network that's operated with impunity for years. I'm not writing him up. I'm recommending a commendation. You can't. Carson sputtered. I can. Morrison looked at James. Thank you. Seriously, this is good police work. Rough, definitely outside protocol. But good. James nodded. Your people good to process the scene. We've got it. Morrison gestured to his team. Get your pack home. You've got wounded. We'll coordinate evidence sharing in the morning. The drive back was quiet. Sarah slept in the passenger seat, her head against the window. James drove, carefully aware of her exhaustion. Around them, his pack members processed their own trauma. Combat was never clean, never simple. But tonight had been necessary. Eric's voice came through the radio. Boss hospitals reporting all wounded are stable. Nothing critical. We got lucky. Not luck. Training. James glanced at Sarah. Tell medical I'm bringing Agent Novak in for eval. She's been running on adrenaline for 48 hours. Copy that. Eric paused. Boss, you know the pack's going to talk. About you and her. About mate bonds and succession. Let them talk. James was too tired for politics. Right now, I just want everyone alive and safe. They reached the compound at dawn. Medical staff took Sarah despite her protests. James submitted to eval himself. Minor cuts, bruising, nothing serious. By the time he finished, the compound had settled into post-combat routine. Damage assessment, after-action reviews. The business of survival. James found Sarah in the guest quarters. She'd showered, changed into clean clothes. She was sitting by the window staring at nothing. Can't sleep. James kept his voice quiet. Every time I close my eyes, I see him. Volkov, the way he looked when Sarah stopped. I know it was justified. I know he would have killed you. But I keep seeing it. James sat beside her, not touching but close. The first kill stays with you, no matter how necessary, no matter how justified. It changes something. Does it get easier? Sarah's voice was small. No, but you learn to carry it. James looked at his hands, calloused, scarred, 3 decades of violence written in tissue. I remember every person I've killed, every face, every shot, and I live with it by knowing each one protected someone weaker. Each death meant someone else lived. That's cold comfort. Sarah's voice cracked. I'm a scientist, a federal agent. I solve problems with evidence and analysis, not bullets. Tonight you saved my life with a bullet. James turned to face her. You adapted. You survived. You protected your partner. That's not cold. That's what warriors do. I'm not a warrior. I'm just... Sarah stopped. Her shoulders shook. I don't know what I am anymore. James did something he'd been avoiding for 48 hours. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her, let her cry into his chest while his wolf crooned comfort. She was his mate, his partner, his responsibility. And for the first time since Emily died, James let himself feel the bond, let himself acknowledge the connection. Sarah clung to him. Her tears soaked his shirt. He held her until the storm passed, until her breathing steadied. When she pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. Thank you. Her voice was hoarse. For everything. The rescue, the protection, the partnership. You don't need to thank me. James brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture felt natural. Right, you're Pac now. We protect our own. I'm not Pac. I'm FBI. You're an Omega in my territory who fought beside my wolves. James smiled slightly. That makes you Pac. FBI is just your day job. Sarah almost laughed. It felt like progress. You're impossible. I'm practical. James stood, offered his hand. Come on, you need real sleep, not adrenaline crash, actual rest. She took his hand. Her grip was strong. They walked to the bed. James pulled back the covers. Sarah hesitated. Stay. Her voice was small. Just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone right now. James felt his wolf surge. Every instinct screamed to stay, to hold her, to claim her properly and complete the bond. But Sarah was vulnerable, traumatized. Taking advantage would be, I'll stay. James sat on the bed's edge, fully clothed, maintaining boundaries, until you sleep. Sarah lay down, closed her eyes. James watched her breathing slow, watched tension drain from her shoulders. When he was sure she was asleep, he stood to leave. Her hand caught his. Don't, please. James looked down. Sarah's eyes were still closed, but her grip was firm. He made a decision, kicked off his boots, lay down beside her, stayed on top of the covers, put an arm around her. Sarah sighed, relaxed completely. Within minutes, she was deeply asleep. James stared at the ceiling, felt the mate bond humming, felt his wolf settle for the first time in 5 years. This woman, this brilliant, stubborn, entirely inappropriate woman, had walked into his life and changed everything. He didn't know what happened next. Didn't know if she'd stay after Blackthorn's legal proceedings finished. Didn't know if she'd choose the bond or walk away. But right now, holding her while she slept peacefully for the first time in 48 hours, James let himself hope. Maybe second chances were real. Maybe 58 wasn't too old. Maybe Sarah shifted in her sleep, murmured something that sounded like his name. James tightened his arm, protected her from nightmares with his presence. Tomorrow would bring federal investigations, legal proceedings, political fallout. But tonight there was just this, a warrior and his mate, rest earned through survival. James closed his eyes. For the first time since Emily, he let himself sleep beside someone else. The bond sang, his wolf purred, and in the Montana wilderness surrounded by pack and protected by walls won through violence, two scarred souls found something neither expected: peace.